Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another live session. Thank you so much, as always, for being here. Um, Back again. We're looking at for this year. This may be, and there's probably 3 lives left this year. Basically, the lives for the rest of the year will be determined by you, the audience. And so, as long as people want to keep coming back, maybe conducting a session on the 19th of December, but I'll continue to get a pulse from the community on whether you want me to continue pushing forward as we get close to the holiday season, or I might take those last 2 weeks off. And obviously, I'll definitely ask the community for feedback and making sure it feels right. So as we come into the end of the year, I anticipate that these lives will slow down a little bit. We know that we're hitting probably the last 2 to 3 critical weeks for hiring right now. And so we're going to do our best to see if we can squeeze people into those jobs, negotiate those offers. And obviously, today and in all lives, we're here to really chat and talk about everything. And I will hang out with the community as long as people want to hang out. Obviously, I'm building up. It's always a little bit of a slow warm up as people join the live session. So let's talk about a couple of things. So I want to just start by addressing yesterday's video. Sometimes I get the feeling when I do some of these videos, I do them and I publish them and I think, okay, like, is there enough context and understanding? Do they make sense? And so yesterday's video is really about utilizing ChatGPT to help with your assumptions for hypothetical questions. Assumptions create visuals. If I tell you I had a good dinner last night, it doesn't mean anything to you. If I tell you I had the best pepperoni pizza of my life last night, boom, love it or hate it, you can picture pepperoni pizza. And culturally, in a lot of cultures, people don't even eat those ingredients that come on pepperoni pizza, but you can picture it. Why am I going down this path? Because if you can create great assumptions in your hypothetical answers, you are going to have an audience that can follow you on the journey because they have a visual connection to it. Check out that video. Sometimes what I do can seem kind of, I don't really know how to articulate it, but it's kind of like in the sky. It seems far fetched, but follow those tips and tricks. If you pre plan assumptions before going into an interview where you know you're likely to get hypothetical questions, that's most companies will ask at least a couple. Obviously, the companies like Google will ask quite a bit more hypothetical questions, but check that video out. Before we dive in, I'm just going to do a quick prompt on my services. And before I do that, let me know where you're visiting from. Any comments, questions, remember anything and everything is on the table. But in our default mode, when we have a little bit of downtime, we'll talk about maybe some ways to uncover how you could have a bad future boss in the interview process. So practiceinterviews.com/AI, that's for early adopters. So we're starting to allow early adopters onto the platform, getting user feedback. And if you haven't signed up, just go to practiceinterviews.com or practiceinterviews.com/AI and you can join as an early adopter. It's 2 things. So we're really going to try and get every early adopter on the platform. It means you get to try it out for free and give us feedback. Obviously, for the super users, we'll be reaching out and asking maybe to do user interviews. And then for anybody who signs up, you will get a discount. The discount is guaranteed for anybody who signs up. So even if you're not that interested in testing the free version, please join us. We will be adding users and people who haven't got access yet. It's coming soon. We actually want to see if we can break the tool because we've had a lot of really great interest and signups. I know it's getting to the slow part of the year, December, super slow, but I'm still doing interview coaching, negotiation coaching. We have our interview mastery course. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I go live 10 a.m. Pacific every single Tuesday, and then new original content every Monday. Okay, let's dive in. There's not much I can see in the comments here, but just dive in. Let me know what you want to chat about, and then again, we'll talk a little bit about this bad future boss. It's something that I want to spend a lot of time focused in on because it's so important. So let's dive in. Hi from Sarasota. Wow, G down to 475 jobs. Yeah, it's getting pretty lean. It's crazy. If we were to go back to April, May, June of 2022, now again, I get that that's almost 18 months from 18 months ago, but there were about 4,200, 4,300, so we're at 10%. 12% of where we were 18 months ago. Now, at the end of the year, it's always going to slow down, but it's slow, and I've been pretty candid, I think, with the audience. As the Google jobs go down and just the big tech jobs go down, so does my business and my revenue. So again, one of the reasons for trying to go in a different path and try something different with the AI tool. Ping ponging a bit from 150 to 175. Okay, thanks for that. It's helpful. Eager to test the AI tool, and awesome, Brad. Software testing is my job. Okay, so you'll have lots of good feedback. Thanks, can't wait. Yeah, I'm really excited as we're letting users on there. It's one of the most interesting things to talk about. It's like when you use a product or service, if your user feedback isn't being integrated, like, is the owner of the business, the people who are running the business, do they really care about their users? I had a user feedback interview yesterday, and I was almost giddy. I was like laughing. I equated to being, and I was talking with my dev team this morning, I equated it to being like a kid in a candy store. Like, you can't see what you can't see. So it's not articulating it well, but it's fun. It's fun to test and kind of see, okay, like, what's going on? Like, what is the user feedback telling me? Because there were a couple of really simple things that I didn't see them. And so again, I just think if you use any product or tool like that, user feedback, it's actually a fun thing. And I've had so many instances where, we've all been users where our feedback wasn't considered, or decisions were made that weren't user based, and that's what it's going to be like. And I'm obviously not here to spend all the time talking about my tool. I'm here to answer any questions. So I can already tell we're going to have a bit of a slow day today. In the US, we're still kind of trying to work off some of that Thanksgiving food. But please, there's any questions, comments, where you're visiting from, anything that you want to engage with today would be great. So usually I'll just kind of sit back and wait for some of it to come in. Okay, let's start with this one. Hey, Jeff, thanks for all your efforts. Though it's off topic, there's nothing off topic. Just an FYI, like the thumbnails and the titles are just topics to talk about in the downtime. I'm here to answer any and all questions. Could you please stocks and sign-ons we can request for L62 analytics role at Microsoft? So I think maybe we are having this exchange in the Slack community as well. So if anybody hasn't signed up for the Slack community, we have a free Slack community. But I think the biggest challenge here is we're still struggling on location. So these requests are coming in, but I don't know the location, and I do give all my guidance based on location. So every time we push towards equity and sign on and numbers and all this stuff without a location, it's hard for me, because I believe the 3 locations we're talking about are Seattle, Austin, and California. And California is not really a location in my mind. It's Bay Area, LA, San Diego. Where are we talking about in California? So the request for specificity, when I like to provide numbers, I like to have the specific role. So L62 analytics, okay, like maybe a little more context there. And then on location, it sounds like they don't care on this remote one. Yeah, I mean, for 62, I'm going up on sign-on to 20, 30, 40K, and then an equity at least 200K as an anchor. Those would be my recommendations. But it's I think that the same questions keep coming up, and at a certain point with the big tech companies, here's the great news. The great news is that we anchor high because they're not going to rescind our offer. So when you go and anchor high with Google or Amazon or Microsoft or Apple, I've never had an experience with any of those big tech companies them rescinding because we went really big. But just do it. Just go big, and that's all you can do. Like, anchoring is not an exact science. The biggest thing to remember when you anchor is the anchor can't be too low. If they meet your anchor, you didn't do it right. They should not meet your anchor. Whatever you anchor with, they should not be able to come back with those numbers. So much of what you see on the negotiation coaching side, it's a really valid point. If at any point the company hits your request, you didn't do a good enough job. And that's just to be really, say it with graciousness and kindness, but the reality is that anchors are not meant to be met. Anchors are meant to be a stretch so that you're bringing them up, they're bringing you down, and then you can use that anchor for future negotiations. But you see, it's just amazing how much the advice on negotiations is so poor. I did a LinkedIn post yesterday. Like, for example, never provide a range. You provide me a range of $80,000 to $100,000, I'm going to pay you $80,000. So tell them $100,000. Now, I don't like $100,000. It's too even of a number. It's not creative enough. And so ask them for $93,500, right? Or $93,250, because the creativity of the number makes them believe that you've done your research, and that's what you need to achieve. So I know it's a bit of a tangent, but we're pretty slow today, so I'll go on some tangents. Hi, Jeff. I've completed 5 rounds of the interview for PM3. Oh, hi, Jeff. Completed 5 rounds of an interview for a PM 3 weeks ago, an additional casual chat 2 weeks ago, and the recruiter said he will reach out to me this week with updates. To show my passion, took courses on Coursera to acquire certificates on expertise on MT desired job description, with about 10 certificates required, and shared with recruiter that I'm really committed, okay, and willing to enhance my skills. Do you think this is a good approach? What else can I do to give good impressions before they make their final decision? I like it from a knowledge-based perspective, and I like that you're doing this, but the recruiter typically isn't the decision maker. I don't want to say that holistically, because the recruiter can have influence, and I had a recent case where a recruiter really didn't like one of my clients, and they did have influence. So I don't want to say they don't have influence, but I mean, is this really going to move the needle? Probably not. But is this the type of approach that you want to take? Of course, you want to go in with a learning mindset and make sure that you are learning those critical skills that are going to be critical for the role. So I like the approach. Will it really help? Probably not, but that's okay. Again, it will be applicable when they decide to hire you. Yeah, supply chain analytics, remote, but would like to work from Austin, Seattle, Bay Area. Okay, so remember, the Bay should pay you more than Austin. Why? Because the cost of living in the Bay Area is so much higher than Austin. We hear, okay, Austin's going up. It's nothing close to the Bay. So they should pay you somewhere higher. Now, Seattle's kind of the middle ground of that. So they should pay you differently per market. Okay, so again, it's a really easy question. You just go to the recruiter and say, hey, are you going to pay me differently per market? The fact that they're offering it, that they've provided an offer to you before you've decided on location, you really never see that. So again, I have had a couple of use cases where I saw people getting the same salary remote, regardless of where they were hired, but it's pretty uncommon. You're welcome. Is it a bad sign? Okay, so is it a bad sign for both the hiring manager and director of a team to give a statement of support for your G recruiter to include an HC packet? Have heard of HM statement of support, but not a director's statement of support. What is the average time frame from a recruiter to receive results from HC? Recruiter said HC would meet today, would answer today, tomorrow, likely or unlikely. Okay, so okay, thank you. And I think if I remember correctly, this is for your husband. If I remember correctly, my memory doesn't always serve me right, but so first things first. The more support you get going into HC, the better. Have I really heard of directors also writing a statement of support? No, it's pretty uncommon and it's pretty positive. Like if a director is going to take their time on top of the hiring manager to support the hire, that's a really, really good sign. So that's positive. Now, this second piece just absolutely blows my mind, and there's really nothing else to say. Like if HC is meeting today and you were my candidate, I'd say HC is meeting at from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. today. Cases sometimes get reviewed first, second, or last. You will hear from me no later than 11:01 p.m. today. Because the reality is that why would they wait to give the decision if HC makes the decision between 10 and 11 o'clock today? Why would they wait for the candidate to get that response? That is crazy. And we hear this happening all the time now with HC meeting and recruiters waiting. You are my number one priority if you're going to HC, and I will call you the second after it happens. And that's what I did in all my HC cases for my entire time at Google. I don't know what they're doing with the training, but it's getting really bad. This is just, I don't know how this would ever be considered acceptable. So just my 2 cents on that. So I don't know why HC would meet today and they wouldn't get the answer today. That just sounds ridiculous, but good luck. It sounds really positive. A director statement of support is awesome. I found an open role that fits, but need 3 to 4 weeks to review for tech interviews. Don't know if this is reasonable if the job was to close end of year, or is it normal to carry over into 2024? It depends. Yeah, it really depends. Some roles will, some roles won't. So sometimes it's like a use it or lose it, or sometimes it's like a critical role and it's just going to roll through. So we don't know. So it's just, I never want you to hold off, right, on interviewing. I think that I understand like the need to prep, but if it's a role you're really excited about, you got to get after it and figure out a way to squeeze in the time if they're interested in interviewing you. Waiting in today's economy and market is not my personal recommendation. I hope that helps. The recruiter said he will share my achievements with the hiring team, shared certificates on LinkedIn profile, waiting for the final decision. Is there any more you can do? No, this is really it. There's nothing more you can do at this point. So the waiting, that's the hardest part. I always tell people, right, like patience is a virtue, but patience when we're waiting for hiring decisions is incredibly painful. Okay, thank you. Specific role for PM, not general. Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, again, it's just a waiting game. Okay, we're pretty early on into the live sessions. This is a good indication of kind of just what the market's giving, and I've mentioned quite a bit throughout the year that 2023. It's been sleepy, and that's okay. But I think the engagement will start to drop off as we hit later in the year. So again, any downtime that we have, I'll start to talk about the theme, and then obviously as any questions come in, I'm happy to answer them. But let's break and talk a little bit about how to identify a bad future boss. So more and more what I've realized and how I've kind of been educating myself since I've gone on this entrepreneur journey, and now I'm approaching 6 years of working for myself and kind of being out on my own. And what I've realized with a lot of time and perspective is that there is no relationship more important than the manager relationship, and everything else should be secondary. Even in a lot of cases, compensation, the company, etc. good manager, good experience, less stress, and more likelihood for promotion, for more money, for just a better life balance, etc. So, what is the piece I've been defaulting to time and time again? The 9 lies of work. Lie 6, people can accurately judge others. They've proven that they can. So, what that means is that if you don't have a boss that's aligned and sees things in a similar way to you and is aligned on how you work, so like what is your path and how you do things, whether you're more strategic, analytical, etc., you can be doing the same work, but if you're analytical and they're strategic, they may think you're a bad worker, but then you get a boss who's analytical and you're analytical and they think you're the greatest worker. This has been proven. This is scientifically proven that people cannot accurately judge others, give accurate recommendations of others. So, when we're in the interview process, what we want to do, and one way to drive and identify whether we have a boss that's aligned and whether they're going to be a bad boss for us, is understanding our personality type. So, you may want to take like a DISC, Myers Briggs, colors assessment, understand that. And then in some of your questions, we can drive more towards this. And I'm just spitballing and brainstorming. But of course, the number one question that we're going to ask to identify a bad future boss or good future boss is basically we got to ask them questions about themselves and see their response. What do you love about your role? What do you love about the company? What do you love about the team? If any of those answers come back with negativity, run. If they're telling you negative things before they even hire you, that the company's kind of going through some tough times and the team's not doing well, I don't want to work for that boss. It's a little scary that they would be highlighting these things. Then you can say, I tend to be really analytical. What's your approach to X or Y or Z? Tell me a little bit more about your style. Again, keeping it on really positive tone. Really thinking through this for the first time as I'm talking out loud now. But again, if you haven't read the 9 lies of work about work, lie number 6, it will blow your mind. It kind of makes it difficult for me to imagine anybody working for anybody, really. But read that book; it's a great book. All right, let's dive back into questions, and then we'll continue to come back to that topic. And obviously, if there are any questions about that topic, let me know. Okay. Hey Jeff, after a 9-week process and completing all stages for a CE role at G, I have been told that I didn't get the role. Okay. Recruiter mentioned that as my feedback was strong, my profile will be kept on file, and if headcount opens, I will be fast-tracked to meet with the hiring manager. Does this actually happen, or is the recruiter just saying this to soften the blow? I don't know for sure, but it's the question is does it benefit the recruiter to tell you that? Like, what's the benefit to the recruiter? I mean, yeah, like, what's the maturity level of a recruiter? What's the tenure and experience level of a recruiter? Yeah, maybe they're saying that just to soften the blow and make it easier for you and on themselves. But typically recruiters say that because it's reality. Otherwise, there's just no point to saying it. You just say, and definitely keep your eyes on roles in the future and apply again if you'd like. But what it sounds like to me is you completed all stages. You probably did well. It was probably close. The feedback's probably strong enough that in the future you definitely would be reconsidered. So I want to reflect positively, because I just don't see the benefit to the recruiter just saying, hey, it was great. Like, I just wouldn't tell you that because I know that you're probably going to follow up with me again, reach out again. So I think it's positive. And here's the really good news. We live in a data-driven world, right? And data is really important. What am I going to do? Am I going to take the chance with you in a future interviews for a future role where I have lots of data and feedback that's probably positive? Or am I just going to test it and wing it with Sue, who I don't know anything about? I'm going to go to my known entity where I have data. And so if you could see internally, like what it looks like at Google, the experienced recruiters and sourcers are spending all their time sourcing Google's internal applicant tracking system, GHire. They're not even leaving that system because there's so much good data within that system. So it sounds positive. I'm sorry that you didn't get the role this time, but definitely keep trying, keep your pulse with your recruiter. And my recommendation always is, hey, can I check in with you once a month, once every 2 months, once every 3 months? Should I just check in with you when I see a new role? Try and build that cadence and get approval for that cadence, because usually that works out better too, as well. Let me know if you have additional questions. Uh, uh, Statistically, body language is way more important than the words you use. The words you use. Now, in a job interview, I think the challenge there is if we say our words only count for 7%, it's like, well, the focus of a job interview is on the words. So I think in certain scenarios that will spike, but your body language is key. So shoulders back, chin up, smiling, good eye contact. I mean, I'm not looking at myself during these sessions. Now, of course, I'll look around because it's odd if I just stare into the camera, but great eye contact is important too. So good body language is really important, and good questions are absolutely critical. If you say you don't have any questions, and or the questions are all you focused, which I personally find as a big turnoff, like, what are the biggest challenges I'm going to face? What do I need to do? I want you to ask questions like, well, what do you love about the job, the role? I want them talking about themselves. They're going to like you more because of it. It's a strategy. But one quick item to note, and obviously I do a lot of client work, so a lot of us will look here, we'll look up kind of as we're thinking through our answers. Sometimes we'll look down, but just make sure you don't disconnect too much with your interviewer. I will have clients that will literally disconnect with me for like a 60 to 90 seconds while they're answering. They're talking right here and they're thinking through their answer, but they disconnect from an eye contact perspective. So you don't have to be locked in. I've told a lot of people this. Well, it's a funny story, so I'll just tell it. I had an interview at Google. It was an in-person interview, and this person locked in and would not look away from me. And I realized that I did that as well. Like I would lock in, I wouldn't blink, I would just stare at the person. And it was the first time I learned a good lesson that I was probably making people uncomfortable just by staring at them, because I can hold eye contact for extremely long periods of time. So we also need to hold and break, because it can be uncomfortable to have too much eye contact as well. I know it's a funny story, but this person and I were like locked in for 30 minutes, and I was like, wow, okay, I think I'm doing this to the candidates, and it's kind of weird. Funny story. I hope that helps. Hey, Jeff, thanks for the advice on career growth. Quick question. Is it time for SDEs to ditch our regular hats and start rocking the ML headgear? Yeah. I mean, I think anything doubling down into ML AI obviously is it's the path. I think the whole developer programmer space is going to evolve and change, and it will probably be faster than people think, and it's probably going to be pretty shocking, I think, what happens. Because at this point now, if we're to reflect back over the last, I don't know, 20 to 30 years, the highest paying roles on average have been developers, software engineers, and that has remained consistent. If we look at the market, companies in general, SWEs, SDEs are getting paid the most. And what's going to happen is AI is going to remove some of those jobs. So the more you can adopt it and embrace it, and whether that's ML or AI or whatever, we're talking in broader concepts. We can kind of break those into sections if we need to, but it's really important. And I mean, I think that it's kind of funny, because the reality is even if you look at me, right, like the product that I'm creating a product to replace myself, basically. I mean, that's really the reality of it, right? Is that I'm building an AI tool to help people practice their interviews so that they don't necessarily need the one-on-one coaching. Am I trying to totally crush my business at this very moment? No, I mean that's not the point. I still think there's value in getting direct feedback, right? But like we're all going to start leveraging these tools, and obviously on the engineering side, it's a little different. But yeah, I think we all need to be playing in the growing space, right? Because if we're not, if we refuse it, if we don't acknowledge it's here, we're going to get left behind. Okay, we're out of questions. I'm just going to do my prompt on the 30s, always at 30 minutes. I'll just give a quick prompt on my services and then we'll dive back as any other questions come in. It's going to be a slow day. I don't think we'll go super long today, but we'll just see how it goes. I'm always happy to hang out and answer questions. Practiceinterviews.com/AI. We're starting to slowly trickle users onto the platform. It's going to be a slow trickle and then it will be a dive. And then we'll see if putting a ton of users on the platform breaks it. I mean, in some cases, you kind of want it to break just to see what happens. But if you go there, two things, we're pretty much going to guarantee now that every early adopter will have an opportunity to use the platform. We'll cap usage, of course. And then the other guarantee that is 100% is if you sign up as an early adopter, you're going to get a massive discount when you first sign up. And it's going to be worth it. It's going to be really, really cheap to try the product for a month if that's what you choose. And I can tell you right now, I have looked at all the competitors and it's already in its most basic version, probably better than all the competitors. I mean, obviously we're gonna work at it. Obviously, I'm incredibly biased, but the feedback's going to be super, super powerful. Still doing one-on-one interview and negotiation coaching, interview mastery course. Still getting tons of good feedback on that. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. And if you've never subscribed, I go live 10 a.m. Pacific every Tuesday and new original content every Monday. Okay, let's dive back in. Okay, I went off there and I kept that banner on. Okay, so we don't have any additional questions now. Again, we have a small audience, so okay, here we go. So thanks for the advice. To be honest, it can be tough to pick the motivation up, especially as the G interview process is so demanding. Any advice on how to bounce back? Well, yes, but it's tough advice. I am a big fan of momentum when it comes to interviewing. So what happens? Well, for a lot of us, we go after this opportunity that's like we're interviewing and we're getting really serious about it because it's our dream opportunity, it's our dream company, it's a great role, we're really excited, we're enthusiastic. And then if by chance we don't get the role, we stop. And then what does that mean? All the hard work that you've put in just goes away. So when interviewing, I would say if you can keep the momentum up, if you can find a like role at a similar company, then keep going because that momentum will carry over into other interviews. If we just stop preparing, you're really going to have to restart once you get into interviews again. Again, does that always make sense? Is that advice always good? Of course not, right? But I am a big fan of momentum. So I recommend keep going. And let's be honest about it, right? Does anybody consistently just practice their interview skills? They don't. They don't. So that's a really hard thing to do. Interviewing is not the most fun thing. It's fun for weird people like me who actually really enjoy it. But for 99.9% of people, it's not something that they enjoy. So you're not going to be just keeping your skills up for an hour a week or 2 hours a week. It's not like practicing Spanish or shooting free throws or whatever you're going to do, where maybe you're going to keep up that consistency because it's something where you want to get better all the time. Sometimes we interview and then we stop. We interview and then we stop. So if you can keep up that momentum, that's what I recommend, if possible. Excited for your new AI tool. Congrats. I'm looking forward to test soon. You need this. Yeah, it should be fun. I'm pretty pumped. Okay, so what is the process for opening a new job rec at G? Do they generally release new recs in January? Um, the process is absolutely brutal and cumbersome. Um, the way that they do the approval processes at Google, I haven't seen it really changing. Remember, I'm not internal and I've been gone a long time, but it was always very, very cumbersome to get approvals. And since the layoffs, what I've heard from my friends inside is that it's gotten much harder. Historically, historically, if you were to look back, Google doesn't release a ton of jobs in January. Usually it's closer to Q2 that you'll see a bigger release of jobs. And as it rolls into summer, the jobs really ramp up just because the approval processes take so long. Obviously, I have a lot of advice and guidance for the way that jobs are handled, the way the recruitment process is handled at Google. And I always want to recognize that it was a great opportunity for me, but I think Google would be pretty honest that they need some changes, but it really just needs to be completely blown up. The way that they have the approval processes for jobs, the whole hiring process, all that stuff, just somebody needs to have the courage to blow it up. And I think that that was the case probably, 10 years ago. And it still needs to happen now. It just needs to be simplified. It needs to be less here and more like department driven, product area driven, because just bringing in all these stakeholders and decision makers from all these different groups and all the steps and process and interviews and all that stuff. Um, yeah, it's been tough. Uh, so yes, I would not, long-winded answer. I would not expect that they would be. I wouldn't expect that they would be releasing a ton of jobs in January. Pros and cons of working from Austin, Seattle rather than the Bay, Tech Hub, and vice versa. Um, okay, so, well, yes. I mean, your goal is to work remote. So if you're working remote, the benefits of being in the Bay Area are not as strong, right? Now, of course, the Bay Area, I lived there for 5 years. It's one of the most beautiful parts of the country. There's lots of benefits, lots of time where you're basically year round, you're able to be outdoors and hiking and wine country and all these like amazing things and the mountains and the lakes and Lake Tahoe is out there and like all these amazing things that are Bay or close to the Bay that you can enjoy. So like quality of life is extremely and incredibly high, but the cost relative to income is the worst of any area in the country. Like what you make and how far your money goes, your money will go the least far in the Bay. And if you're working remote, some benefits in the times where you may be able to go into the office, sure. Now, we're talking about Microsoft. So the hub is Seattle. So Seattle, fantastic city. If you've ever been there, I mean, it's such an amazing city, but the weather is the weather, right? Nice summers and then rain for 9 months of the year, or mist or gray. So like you have to be okay with that weather to live there. And then Austin's going to be your cheapest market. But obviously rising costs in that market, it has become quite a bit of a tech hub. So they're all three are tech hubs. For Microsoft, Seattle is actually the hub. But I don't think working in the Bay for Microsoft provides as many opportunities as it would in Seattle. But a lot of that is personal choice. Like, if I had to pick those three, I would pick the Bay just because it's California. I know the weather, I know the quality of life, and but I would knowingly do that at a cost. And Austin and Seattle, while they're both fantastic, amazing cities, they're just cities that I wouldn't personally live in. And that's, again, not to downplay them because they're both such amazing cities, but I wouldn't want to live there personally. So I think you think about where you want to live as your primary, and then think about the other things as secondary. But that's just the way I look at it. Been referred by somebody at GE in the past. Once you get an email from Google that you are referred, you can apply to 3 roles using the referral link. Is there any other way to get your loop via referral? I'm not sure I understand the question. So you get referred by somebody, yeah, you can apply up to 3 roles, but is there any other way to loop via referral? Well, you definitely want to loop your referrer in and make sure that they know the roles you've applied to, have them poke the recruiter potentially for you, but I'm not sure I understand the second part of the question. So please follow up. Let me know if you can clarify a little bit for me. So would it be okay to go ahead and ping her and ask her if she's heard from HC? He didn't want to be pushy. I've read about appeals on blind. If HC says no, would the packet go to a different HC? Not sure if you'd have any insight on how appeals work. Okay, so yes, and again, my my coaching is I just can't for the life of me figure out why the recruiter wouldn't say the exact time that HC was meeting and when the decision would be made. It's unbelievable. Like it's a data point and it blows my mind. With appeals, the way it works is, so HC comes back with 1 of 3 results, right? Yes, move forward to executive review in the offer stage. Yes, executive review is back, unfortunately. They have added this second bar again, which was disappeared and now it came back. So that needs to go through that executive review, and pretty much almost no packets get kicked out at that point, and then it moves to offer. So obviously there's the no stage, and that's not an appeal, right? And then there's the maybe stage. And so what the maybe stage is, well, feedback was good, but we need a little bit more of a signal on googliness. We need a little bit more of a signal on cognitive ability, right? So sometimes they'll kick back. And usually with the appeals process, there's really 2 paths. Path 1 is they just need a better and stronger statement of support. I don't think that's going to be the case here with a hiring manager and director statement of support. The more likely case is 1 to 2 additional interviews to overcome those areas that weren't as strong, and then it goes back to hiring committee. So would all the same people review? No, usually it just goes back to hiring committee, and maybe you have 1 or 2 of the same members, maybe 0 of the same members, but it just goes back to the same hiring committee. It's not a different committee. I hope that helps. Interesting point about dream job. Do you think the concept of a dream company is problematic? And the key is to chase the role, experience, and not the company. This is a fantastic question. Let's just kind of talk about it, because I think it's really important for the audience to understand, like, there is value in a company, right? And so, like, what's the value of a company? Well, there's a value in a brand, right? And so, again, one of the reasons why I promote big tech companies, including Google, is because I know the value for me personally, and I've seen the value for thousands of others. It's not necessarily about staying at the company for forever. It's the value of getting that brand on your resume and on your LinkedIn profile. There is value in a brand. And when we talk about big tech, the value is priceless. I'm talking to everybody now because I worked at Google. I didn't work at Google, I'm not here. Period. I understand that and I recognize that. And I've been really candid with the audience. I'm trying to remove myself from Google. I really am. And that's just me being totally transparent. I'm happy to coach people on Google, and obviously it's been a good business for me, but I wouldn't be here without it. So there is something to be said about the value of the brand, even if everything else isn't perfect. Should you maybe take a little bit of a risk to get that brand on there? Yeah, it's worth it. Okay. But I think that it's also really important to make sure that if you are going to go into one of these big companies, that you at least like the manager, you like the role. Now, should we sometimes push and drive into a role and a manager we don't love to get that brand? Yes, because that's doing what's best for us. And so The reason why I feel so comfortable about what I do as a business is because promoting the value of big tech from a branding perspective and what it will do for you personally, it's 100% win for anybody in this community and audience. You get one of these big tech brands in your background, it will open doors. These companies pay you a lot of money. Will your experience be fantastic? We don't know. But those other things are important. I know that this is a bit of a tangent, but it's a great question. You want to ask yourself, do I like the manager? Because that's gonna be your experience. Do you like the role? Will it keep you engaged and excited? Is it challenging? And then just remember, hey, get one of these big brands in your background and you will open a ton of doors. I cannot even tell you what happened in my LinkedIn profile. 6 months after working for Google, you would be shocked at the amount of job opportunities that came my way, the number of people that hit me up. And before that time, nothing, no interest, right? Like we're very, very limited or little interest. But once I had Google, the interest was just through the roof. It was like all of a sudden I had become this different person just because I had this one change of one brand in my LinkedIn profile specifically. And I think we talk a lot about the brand. We talk a lot about the brand from a resume perspective, but really it's LinkedIn because that's the brand that people are going to see. Jeff, thanks for doing this. Sure, recently completed L4, L5 loop, and the recruiter said they will forward the packet to HC. Okay. I have a question on compensation. I'm reading over various forums that lately it has been difficult to get a good offer without a competing offer. How true is this? Location, APAC. Okay, well, I'd love to know a little bit more specificity if you're willing for APAC. Because if you're going into Google, like the APAC it's a lot of Singapore, right? So again, I'd love to know the location. But the competing offer thing, it's funny. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the competing offer. There are so few companies that can compete with Google from an offer perspective. Very few. So there's this kind of idea or concept that we need a competing offer to drive up the comp, but the competing offers usually never come close to the Google offer. So they actually don't provide a lot of value, especially when trying to go after a job at Google. And the thing I love about negotiating with Google is you can just go in and anchor high. Just drop that heavy anchor. They're not going to rescind the offer. They might not get you that money, but I have not found competing offers to be very valuable. There's only been, obviously there's a handful of use cases where we have a really strong competing offer from a company that will pay as well, like an Apple. But even like the Amazons and Metas are having a really hard time competing with Google comp. It's still incredibly good. Google's getting a little tighter on how they negotiate and their willingness to really drive the offers up, but it's a very, very small percentage. So just when you go in and negotiate, obviously I'm here to help if you need help with that, but when you negotiate, just anchor like crazy, like just anchor on numbers you can't get. The biggest number to focus in on with Google is the equity. The base from their initial offer to the next offer, L4, L5, might move 10K, 12K, 15K at the max, but probably not. They might give you a sign-on. You definitely want to try and negotiate a sign-on. But the equity, usually the original equity to final equity can definitely be a 2 to 3x. So if they give you X amount, if it's a 2 to 3x, you want to be 4 or 5xing the equity in your request. I hope that helps. Do you pick a better team that is growing, or do you pick a team that matches your experience? Or do you pick a company that has a brand value? Or do you think we should pick a good manager above all? Yeah, so this is tricky, right? Like, I just want to, we're going right back. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's lace, or I'm probably, I think it's pronounced lace, but we're going back to their question. For the long term, we're trying to pick a good manager. Like a good manager will make or break your life. But I definitely am going to probably pick a position that's going to push me. That's how I would pick a job if I was ever going to go work for somebody else, which I won't. I refuse to do it now. So I would want to pick a job where I actually didn't have all the skills so I could learn, because the learning would keep me personally engaged, challenge me, and ultimately make me a better employee. But the brand is valuable, right? So, like, if you can get into one of these big brands, sometimes it surprises me. Like, somebody's coming from a smaller company, the offer doesn't work out like the way they want it to, and they decline a Google or a Meta or an Amazon. It's like, yeah, but that that small amount of time, or maybe the comp wasn't right, or wasn't the perfect team, or whatever, like, that brand would have opened up 20 new job opportunities. So the value of a brand is incredibly important. Now, will you last with a bad manager very long? Probably not, right? So that's something you need to keep in mind as well. Like, don't have manager alignment, you're probably not going to have a really good experience at that company, but brands are powerful. So it's something to keep in mind. Which position have which position have the most potential and future in the eye of AI? Okay, so pre-sales solution consultant, customer engineer, sales engineer, QAM, customer success manager, project manager. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, most potential. I mean, I think all these roles, AI will help. I think all these roles are, I would categorize sales, and account management and project and program management. All these kind of areas, I would qualify these as safe areas, meaning that AI is going to automate out. Like, it's kind of weird because it's like AI is going to automate out the top end jobs, and then the low end jobs, and then the middle, more communication face jobs. Anything where it requires massive amounts of communication, I think that those jobs are still safe for the near future. But at the high end, I think engineering will see some challenges, just in terms of AI's ability to write code, debug code, write new code, etc. It's not quite there yet, but it will get there very, very quickly. And then on the low end, like, I don't think we'll see, like, I think you'll see a lot of automation, like, especially in like the service industry. So when you go and you order food, like, not interacting with people anymore, I think we'll see a lot more of that. Less people behind the counter, more automation, even behind the scenes automation. So it will get really like the low tier and then the high tier. And then I still think that one of the best jobs is skilled labor, like construction, plumbing, electricians. I think that those jobs, I think they're going to pay a lot more in the future, because they're going to be in high demand, because AI really isn't going to be able to replace those jobs for quite a while, in my opinion. I hope that helps. Um, what are some good book recommendations or resources for cracking tech interviews or other rounds at Google? Despite being in tech for more than 11 years, it's not easy to clear them. Yeah, it's like cracking the code or something. There's that one, like, really, really famous book. Um, if we're talking about it from a technical perspective, especially a coding perspective, it's just really important to know that, um, data structures, algorithms, like, sometimes Google really goes back to basics, and sometimes that really throws people off. It's like they're going back to school. So Google tends to focus a lot on the fundamentals and basics, and that's just how they interview. Whether that's right, like, I'm not technical enough to say, like, whether that foundational stuff is really important or not. I'm sure it has some importance, but that's something that I would just want the audience to be thinking about. Yeah, I hope that helps. If that didn't answer your question, um, you know, for interviews, it's like more of the hands-on prep I find to be more valuable. Again, at your level of experience, is Pramp or LeetCode or any of these other platforms going to have the depth and level that you want it to, like coding with people at your level, like I don't know. So um, I hope that answers your question. Let me know if you have more questions. Jeff, please share some follow-up questions that we could expect from the recruiter while negotiating. Um, well, they may ask you something like, where'd you get those numbers from? Where are you getting your research? Why are you coming up with these numbers? But I would expect more pushback in statements. And one that gets people a lot of times is like, okay, great, I really appreciate those are your numbers, but what's the lowest offer you're willing to accept? That's a challenging one. You always want to stick with your numbers. If they said, hey, those expectations are too high, just give me lower numbers. Like, what are lower numbers? Those are some tough questions. And I just always default to, thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you're doing your job. Really appreciate if you'd advocate for me and take my expectations back to the comp team, the decision makers, etc. I always just tell my recruiter to advocate for me, partner with me, and that I'd appreciate them supporting me, because they're not losing anything. They're not incentivized to hold money back. So you should just take your numbers back, but expect anything and everything. I've heard it all. Okay, so they can be really, really tough during negotiations. So it's just important that you stand your ground. Refer to Coinbase for a design role, completing an assessment with situational questions, and an effective to least effective scale. Okay, we are not moving forward. Is it likely that I failed the assessment? Failed? No, probably not failed. It may just have been that they were looking for something slightly different in your answer. Competition wise, they might have had three people who they just liked their answers a little bit better and they decided to move forward with them. And we're not going to have that data, and we'll never have that data. So, yeah, I don't think it's that you failed it. It's probably just that it wasn't ideal, and or the likelihood that maybe just your competition was a little bit stronger. That's all. And I would say just keep trying. Makes sense. Brand is definitely important. I do find that some people wrap their personal identity with the company too much. So when a hard time comes around, some really struggle mentally. Yeah. And so, I mean, it's kind of funny. Like, I intentionally, like, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, one of the things you won't find is that I don't put X Google at the top in my headline. A lot of people do that. So what does that mean? It means that they're really attached to a brand. But at first, I really didn't like it. I was like, oh, this is like, why you need to tell me where you used to work? But then I stopped hating on it, and I just thought, look, that's not what I want to personally do, but there's value in the brand. So why wouldn't you put that right at the top in your headline? Like, it's not going to hurt you. So I do think that people get very caught up in the brand. Yeah, I mean, they can struggle. And I think a lot of what I saw from my friends who got laid off at Amazon, Meta, and Google, that's where I really had, like, a lot of my friends experienced the layoff piece. It's really tough for them mentally because they believed that these companies would really take care of them, especially Google, who the layoffs were pretty brutal. I had two friends on maternity leave who got laid off on maternity leave. So, that was pretty surprising. And I think that made it even tougher because it was just a little bit of a digression from what Google had spoken about from a cultural perspective, that they would take that path. So I do think that people get really, really tied up in the brand for sure. I believe AI will be used to assist or increase productivity of engineers 2 to 3 times rather than replace it, but it could cut down on job wrecks. It's going to, right? If it's going to increase productivity by 2 to 3x, we simply wouldn't need the same number of engineers, right? And I think what's going to happen is it's going to be 2 to 3 to 10 to 100x. And all that's going to happen quickly. I mean, OpenAI ChatGPT 5 is coming out sometime relatively soon. 5 is going to be such a leap and bound. And so, what we also need to recognize is that the pace is going to happen at a faster pace than we've ever seen. So, the improvements are going to be so much greater that, especially I think on the more junior level end, we'll see less and less engineers. Again, that might be counterintuitive, and more junior engineers might be able to utilize AI better and be cheaper. So we may see less senior engineers. It's really hard to tell. Okay, cracking the coding interview. Yes, thank you for this. Cracking the coding interview is supposed to be a fantastic book. Of course, that's not a book that I would read personally, and the system design interview by Alex Zhu, volumes 1 and 2 are solid books. Okay, awesome. And it looks like we're getting a couple of these. Yep, cracking the coding interview offers a good thing. And then designing data intensive applications are used for design prep. All right, I just want to sit on that for a second so that AJ can go ahead and get this down. But yeah, cracking the coding interview is supposed to be a great book. It gets a lot of good reviews. Thank you, Jeff. If we move to another state, tier 2 to tier 1 after joining firm for 6 months, 1 year in a remote job, based on your experience, do you think you would need to negotiate again? Okay, so after, this is a great question. So after our kind of like short exchange on Slack yesterday, I went on to Team Blind, and I was just kind of trying to, if you haven't been, teamblind.com, I think would be a really valuable resource for you. So I went on to kind of like understand Microsoft, like more about Microsoft and remote jobs. I just kind of wanted to be helpful for you. And I did find a case study of somebody recently who was in a high cost of living market, and they moved to Atlanta, and then they asked their manager to see if they could keep the same base, because their base was going to drop quite a bit from high cost of living to Atlanta, which is still expensive now, I get it, but it's a lower cost of living market for tech. And so, and their manager got it approved to keep their same compensation. So yes, that's something that you would absolutely want to negotiate in the future. Again, try teamblind.com. It's really valuable. Obviously, I've helped negotiate a number of Microsoft offers, but your case seems to be unique. So just something to think about. I hope that helps. Jeff, great point. X's are all over LinkedIn these days. Yeah, and again, like, I understand why. They're utilizing the value of a brand, and I don't want to hate on that. Like mentally, I hated on it for a while, but now I understand it and see why it's valuable. Okay, awesome. Glad you got those down. Did the drama at OpenAI make you wary of AI's trajectory? Nope, it did not. There's going to be all sorts of hiccups that happen along the road, and that's any business, any industry. Nobody is, there's a word that's escaping my brain, but nobody can necessarily escape from some of the things that are going to happen. And even if we talk about OpenAI and ChatGPT 4, which is what I've built my tool on top of, like I've seen, because of the usage, I've seen a little bit of a change in like the limitations and some of the ways that it's spitting out information, even in some ways are not as good as it was when 4 first got released, but that's okay. They're going to figure it out. Nothing's perfect, but it doesn't make me nervous. Like, and it's not to say whether AI is great or not great. It's here, and nobody's stopping that train. And so if it's not OpenAI, it's some other platform. In the future, it will be many other platforms, right? Not that there are a number of them already, but we can't slow down this AI train. And to think that it's not going to have a massive impact on our lives is just, I just think it's silly not to see what's going to happen, because again, we're looking at a current state. I mean, like ChatGPT really was public last November. It's a year. Think about how much of a part of the daily conversation it is for all of us in tech, in the space. And that was a year ago. And the leap from 3.5 to 4 was like a 10x. So we're gonna keep 10xing this stuff, and it's gonna happen so quick that it's really gonna change the world very, very quickly. How do recruiters at G build their candidate pool? Do they start with internal refs before looking at external people that apply to the job posting? Or do they keep a list of past candidates? It's kind of all of the above, Jill. Like there's no like one rhyme or reason. Like everybody's going to organize it a little bit differently. Prioritizing internal candidates, no, I'm trying to hit everything, right? Like there's no need to just prioritize internal candidates, even though I think that that's, if I had the choice, I would prioritize internal people. They're already there. They already probably know the role. They know the people. They know the processes. They know how things work. But no, I see prioritizing just the best candidate. So how the recruiters organize that information, it's very different. But like I would always kind of run reports in the system and look for people who had not gotten through hiring committee. I looked at a lot of people who had withdrawn from the process, revisiting those sorts of people, but all sorts of different processes that recruiters take. Jeff, thanks so much. Your videos helped me in the interview presentations. I got a nice job. Amazing. Question about AI and mech. What are the possible disruptions in your opinion? Wow. Yeah, you're really pushing me outside of my skill set, mechanical engineering. I think that for mechie, it's probably more of speed and just an ability to make things more efficient. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Again, this is mechie isn't like really like it's not. I don't know enough about the role. I mean, I've coached on it. I've obviously I've recruited for roles, but it's not a strong enough skill set. But I'd love to hear your opinion. Okay, we're out of questions. We got a good audience going. It's kind of been pretty common that we've been like ramping up a little bit. Obviously, I'm going to hang out for a little longer, but let me just go ahead and we missed on the half hours because I like to just kind of keep going. Let me just prompt on my services really quickly, and then as more questions come in, I'm happy to answer them. So again, we still have the early adopters open for the AI practice interview tools. We're slowly releasing to users. So like the first iteration is going to be like a slow roll, and then we're just going to put the early adopters on there, and we're going to hopefully break the tool a little bit. I mean, obviously I don't want it to break, but if it breaks, that's kind of part of the process. So we'll slowly be releasing that out. I'm going to be sending out an email to anybody who's signed up next week to kind of let you know what's happening. I don't want to just leave it blind for people. So practiceinterviews.com /AI or just practiceinterviews.com. You'll see on the homepage the AI button. So go ahead and click in that. Still doing one-on-one practice interviews, one-on-one negotiation coaching, and obviously getting great feedback on the interview mastery course. If you like what I'm doing today, smash that like button. If you've never subscribed, I go live 10 a.m. Pacific time every Tuesday and new original content every Monday. I am trying to figure out how I'm going to roll on the rest of the year. Probably thinking I'll go live a couple more weeks and then take the last couple weeks off of the live. Probably the same for original content. So we'll see. Obviously, if there's opportunities to continue to go live, continue to pump original content, I'll do it, but probably take the last couple of weeks off. So it's really kind of today and then maybe 2 more sessions to get your questions answered this year. If you haven't joined our Slack community, please join. It's practiceinterviews.com, free resources. I need to get somebody from Slack. And if anybody knows anybody from Slack who's willing to go and like look at my case, because a lot of people are struggling with the Slack sign up. But if you have any struggles, just jeff@practiceinterviews.com. Hey, add me a Slack group. I'm having challenges. I'll go ahead and throw your email address in there right away. I hope that helps. I'm going to answer any last minute questions that come in, and then I'll hop off. And as always, thank you for being here. Thanks very much. Thank you, Jeff. I'm going to need your new tool. Appreciate your lives. Very motivating to get after. Yeah. You should use Discord. Yeah, so yes, yes, but I thank you for the feedback. Like feedback is really helpful. Um, it's just at this point with 4,000 members in the Slack community and making that transition, it's something that I can look at and consider, but it's probably not something I'm going to do. You can kind of see like there's always more, right? And this is even with like TikTok. Like I actually am a huge fan of TikTok. I think if you the algorithm's really good. I really like how you can see the content you want. I think they've done a lot of smart things. You'll see me occasionally do TikToks. It's like I want to be on Reels and TikToks, and I want to be on Twitter, and I want to use Discord. And there's a lot of things that I want to do, and then I got to think about my time and how I spend my time. So it's great advice, but yeah, I think it's just how much can I take on is always what I'm thinking about because I am kind of one of those 7 days a week type people. So is that time always productive? No, it's not. Have you helped people get hired at OpenAI? I've heard their comp for engineers is insanely high. Any stories? No, no, no clients. No, no, I haven't had any clients yet that I can think of. I think maybe no, not that I can think of, and that leads me to believe that I haven't. Sometimes, what will happen is I probably had a client who was interviewing for one company and then maybe they were also interviewing for OpenAI or maybe they were getting an offer from OpenAI. It's the only things I can think of, but not one specific client who came in for OpenAI on the interview or negotiation side yet. And of course, go to levels.fyi and just make sure you're monitoring that teamblind.com as well, like just to monitor like what you're hearing about the comp. I will say I don't know what it is, but the levels data, it's like there's something in there that's flawed. Like offers get in where like the numbers don't make sense. Like the bonus percentage is 40% for like an L3, or it says like an L5 has no equity, and it's just like it's not 100% consistent. Hands down, it's the best comp one out there. I don't even look at anything else, but I just want everybody to understand there are some inconsistencies in those data. In that data, it doesn't mean you shouldn't use it though. Okay, it is the best tool, especially for tech, and I like it. And I think overall, it's pretty good. Lastly, if you're using it, only look at new offers. New offers only use that as a filter. Anybody who's been there, it's way too skewed. I wouldn't look at that data at all. Okay, we got an audience to pick up. 2023, I gotta admit, I get a little nervous. Sometimes the lives start off slow, and I'm thinking, am I gonna have a 15-minute live session? But the community continues to show up and engage, and it's awesome. And I sincerely appreciate you. I'm not here without you. And I know that these lives are valuable because people continue to show up and tell me they're valuable. So in turn, I'll continue to show up. We're out of questions, and I think now is a good stopping point. So thank you so much for being here. I'll be back next week, probably going to go live maybe the next couple weeks and then close it out for the rest of the year. If in 2 weeks people are saying, no, you definitely need to come back the following week, it's definitely something I would consider. Again, thanks so much. If you didn't get your questions answered today or you have more questions, feel free to throw those in the Slack community. Thanks so much. Take care.